brought to bear over the past 42 years have largely been led by passionate individuals, by advocacy groups, by isolated communities. But what we've lacked has been the institutional infrastructure, the governance structure to lead an initiative like this over the long haul that it takes to bring a project like this to fruition. So in that one video that you saw opening this up, I mentioned the year 2020. Well, we filmed that little segment when we were starting to get the rail authority off the ground. In November of 2020, we established the authority, the first passenger rail, the first regional rail authority in the state of Montana in our history. We are the largest transportation district in the state. We convened our first board meeting in 2021 in January, our first in-person meeting in August, adopted our first budget last year. And I'm proud to say that the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority played a key role in helping get key legislation over the finish line this last fall, namely provisions in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that will really provide the path forward to see passenger rail restored. These were the initial counties, the founding member counties of the authority, 12 counties in total. We executed a joint resolution to establish the authority. As you'll see, the bright blue line at the top of the screen, that's the Empire Builder. The orangish color lines reflect both the North Coast Hiawatha, which did in the past, and we intend to in the future connect Chicago all the way to the West Coast, but also recognizing at one point in time, there was north-south connectivity by way of passenger rail service from Denver up to Billings, from Salt Lake City up to Butte. In the year now 2022, we feel as if it's high time to consider those options to add connectivity to our national passenger rail network. Since November of 2020, we've added additional counties. We are now up to 17 counties in the rail authority. We've extended invitations to all of the lighter greenish color counties, one of which is Lewis and Clark, hence the reason why we're here tonight. But there are a few other gaps to fill in, but that's okay. One thing that you'll notice on this map, and this is what is so exciting, I think, about this initiative, and there are, during this dark period of COVID-19, during this dark period of political divisiveness in this country, I would contend this is one of the bright spots. Take a look at this map. These are about as a diverse array and collection of counties politically, economically, urban, rural, ideologically, as you could get. I can't remember the last time that my home county here in Missoula teamed up with Webo County on the far eastern edge of the state for anything. And passenger rail has really galvanized folks across this state. And whatever political affiliation you are representing, it would be at your own risk and to your detriment to not recognize this touch point of commonality. The story of passenger rail in this country is one of loss and attrition. If you look at the map on the upper left-hand corner, compare it to the lower left, it really is a story of loss of something that's a valuable piece of our infrastructure portfolio. And again, this is, we believe, time to bring it back. I'm sorry, it looks like I lost the screen there for a moment. Bear with me. Okay. So this brings us to the present time. This is a map of Amtrak's Vision 2035, focused primarily on state-supported shorter corridors. But take a look at something in the northwestern quadrant of this country. If you see what I see, it's the fact that this is not an absent place on the map. This is a place where people actually live. And again, I think we ought not to underestimate the power of our voice and the importance of recognizing, especially when we're talking about a time in our history where we're ever sensitized to inequities and the need for equity, transportation equity ought to play out here in this region. And we recognize that we are not just talking about an isolated effort within the state of Montana. So we have taken our efforts across state lines, across international lines for that matter, and have done outreach throughout what we are calling this greater northwestern region, greater northwest region of the country, because it's only when we can work together across jurisdictional lines, and as I mentioned, international lines in this case, because part of our larger vision is the possibility of connecting passenger rail all the way from El Paso to Calgary, because as many of us sadly have forgotten, there is another country to the north of us, and in fact, Alberta is 4 times the population of the state of Montana. So there's great opportunity to knit our region, our nation, and in fact, multiple nations together. Rail corridors are important for multiple values. You've heard me say this already, and I will say it again. They create economic value. They provide for transportation equity. Some of the earliest joiners of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority were some of the smallest, most conservative eastern Montana counties. And why was that? Well, one of the reasons was that some of these counties residents have to drive 175, 200 miles to catch an airplane or to seek medical services. Equity is critical. Some of the additional speakers you'll hear from tonight will probably talk about a number of the advantages of passenger rail, among them from a sustainability standpoint, as we look at ways to mitigate climate change, to lighten our footprint, our carbon footprint. Passenger rail as a mode of moving people is one of those opportunities. It's a much more humane and I would say human scale way of transporting yourself and others. As the video pointed out earlier, Montana's winters are not always easy to get from point A to point B. Passenger rail provides in these Rocky Mountain states much more all year, all season mode of transportation. From just an economic standpoint, we commissioned an socioeconomic analysis of restoring passenger rail service. And this was completed late last summer. This contrasts a little with the numbers that you saw in the video, which are actual numbers from the High Line, from the Empire Builder. The numbers you're seeing here are projected as conservative and startup numbers for the North Coast, the restored North Coast Hiawatha route. But nonetheless, they are impressive, over $270 million in anticipated economic benefit to the states that would be through which this line would transmit passengers. Over $44 million in economic benefit to the state of Montana and to those communities that would be serviced by the North Coast Hiawatha, and estimated passenger rail ridership of over 400,000. Think about Helena as an example, and maybe as a counterpoint to this. If we look at the opportunities to not just add a mode of transportation, but to add a real catalyst for economic change, an infusion of vitality, Bozeman could be the poster child for this. And I suspect you can point out other places in Montana that are similar. This train station in Bozeman, which has now become a kind of graffiti artist's canvas, is right at the cusp of a neighborhood in town that is ripe for redevelopment, infusion of investment. Similar, I bet the mayor of Helena can point out tonight opportunities in your city for similar redevelopment and infusion of economic vitality. Look to Livingston, Montana. They already have a very vibrant train station that's no longer being used for passenger rail, but one could easily see this as being adaptively reused for passenger rail service, among other uses. The Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. One thing that we've discovered is that and this effort here in the state of Montana has really captivated the imaginations of folks across our region and nation. Some of the media coverage we've received has truly been phenomenal. And I can't think of, in my years of elected service, both in municipal government and now county government, I serve as a county commissioner in Missoula County, Montana. I have never seen the sort of interest that we've gotten by way of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority in our efforts as we have with this. In fact, globally, not only in this nation, but as you can see, we've received media inquiries and have received coverage in Germany, Portugal, Canada, most recently. So what are some of the next steps for the Rail Authority? Well, first off, as I mentioned, the bipartisan infrastructure law has a provision in it that we helped get over the finish line, and John Tester and the Senate Commerce Committee carried this. And what it does is direct the Secretary of Transportation to conduct a nationwide study of restoring long distance routes that had been discontinued. Our route is the part of the legislative intent of this and is well poised to be part of this study. We'll continue as the authority to expand our efforts to continue to roll out the red carpet for additional counties to join us, to shore up our internal infrastructure of the authority. We'll continue to collaborate both here in the state of Montana and across state lines. You are some of the first to hear that I would like to formally announce that in August of this year, we will be holding the Greater Northwest Region Passenger Rail Summit in Billings, Montana. Stay tuned for more news on that front. And we'll continue to work with the Federal Railroad Administration, U.S. Department of Transportation, Congress, the host railroads, to not only plan for the future, but the great thing about this bipartisan infrastructure law is not only are there real dollars to do the planning, but there are real dollars to the tune of several $billion for project implementation. And we fully plan to set ourselves up for success and to tap into that. So I'm going to cut it off there. And hopefully I didn't go over time, but check us out on our website, bigskyrail.org. Follow us on our social media channels. Look forward to answering your questions tonight, but this is truly an exciting effort. And as we emerge from this pandemic, hopefully at some point in time, we believe that part of the light at the end of this tunnel will be a passenger train. So thanks for having me.
Dave, thank you for that presentation and, of course, for your leadership with this effort. I just want to remind everyone that we will have a Q&A session, question and answer session, at the end of the presentations and the panelists we'll hear from. So please write down your questions if you have them, save them for after the panelists. I want to remind you again, you've seen in the chat, Paul has posted a link to sign a petition to support passenger rail in Lewis and Clark County. To remind you, the commissioners have not yet signed on to be members of the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, which frankly puts Lewis and Clark County at a disadvantage in the planning process for restoring the rail line. So if you agree, please sign the petition, post it in the chat, and let the commissioners know that you support passenger rail across southern Montana. So now I'll be introducing our panelists. Each panelist will have 6 minutes to speak about the benefits of passenger rail and how it will enhance the community. Our first panelist is Mayor Wilmot Collins. Mayor Collins was raised in Liberia, West Africa, came to the United States in 1994. He was elected mayor in 2017 and recently won re-election in 2021. He holds an MA in Human Resources Management. Mayor Collins, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. Well, I know a while ago, well, maybe a year ago, as a matter of fact, I think I was contacted to and the idea was introduced to me, and I thought, wow, this is a fantastic idea. But by the way, I am here as Wilmot Collins, And so I met with Dave. We talked about it. And I realized that, wow, we've always wanted to open up and expand our sixth ward. We've always wanted to include sixth ward within the Helena area. What an opportunity. And like I heard earlier, and when we talk about the passenger rail coming to Helena, I think it's an economic opportunity. It also will be able to expose our hidden gem, Helena, to others who are more willing to get on the train versus traveling our treacherous weather during, the roads during the treacherous weather. So there were so many benefits that I saw with this, and I decided, wow, I like to know more about this. I like to hear more about this. And as I learned more about it, I'm still on board. But 2 days ago, I met a Helenan, and he said, I see you're going to be on the passenger rail forum. I said, yeah, I'll be on it. He said, talk to me about how it's going to be financed. Talk to me about how we're going to finance it in the future. Should it need more? Should it need money? What's the process there? And quite frankly, I was stuck. I didn't know. What I knew was this is a good thing that's coming to Helena. This is a good thing that will open up doors for the sixth ward, for our capital city. It brings economic value. It brings transportation equity. I heard that, and I've also mentioned that on several occasions. I think this is the great equalizer when it comes to transportation. And so that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Collins. Our next panelist is Savannah Barrett, co-owner of Lasso the Moon Toys. She's recently moved back to Montana after a long career in fashion and the arts, living in Europe and Asia. She holds a BFA in visual and critical theory from the School of Visual Arts in New York City. Welcome, Savannah.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, everybody. I'm Savannah. My mom, Amy Barrett, and I are the owners of Lasso the Moon Toys downtown on the Walking Mall. This is our 26th year selling quality playthings to kids and families near and far. When I heard about the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority bringing back passenger rail transportation, I thought that is the most progressive, forward-thinking agenda I'd ever heard about Montana. For the past 50 years, so many people have lacked access to passenger rail services. I'm glad that there's a growing awareness, at least on the local, regional, and state level, to find innovative ways to bring these services back and to return vibrant, reliable inner-city passenger rail service to Montana and to the Northwest. I moved back to Helena a year ago after living in Asia and Europe and New York City for the last 20 years. There was hardly a day that I didn't take multiple trains. Whether I was working in a tiny town outside of Milan or a village in Switzerland or commuting from Hong Kong to mainland China, there was always a train that I could take affordably, speedily, and safely back to the city. It would benefit so many people if our cities were connected to each other and to the rest of the country by rail. This is the first place I've lived as an adult that doesn't have public transportation and trains connecting its towns and cities. I choose not to have a car because I've never had a need for one where I lived, and also I don't want to contribute to greenhouse emissions. Our community is an eco-conscious one, and people would appreciate an alternative to travel by car. Public transportation is affordable and cleaner for the environment. It's also safer, especially during our Montana winters, which are 9 months long, when we need to go to Missoula or Bozeman for the day, but don't want to risk driving on icy roads. Our elderly people who shouldn't be driving could take a train to see doctors and specialists. Those in our workforce who currently commute could take the train instead of driving in hazardous conditions. Our families could travel by rail to shop, dine, and socialize with friends and family in other cities, boosting tourism. Our students could have holidays without risking their lives on the roads. Passenger rail would just save so many lives. Rather than investing in more infrastructure for personally owned vehicles, even electric cars and all the charging stations they require, wouldn't it make more sense to invest in truly modern high-speed rail? This is not about the nostalgia, but let's learn from other countries who depend on rail travel as a common mode of transportation. As owners of a Helena business, we have lots of customers for out of town, and we know it would generate business if we were more accessible to customers in other cities. Reopening the rail for public commuter use would greatly improve our regional and national transportation while furthering the economic and social well-being of communities across our region. It would also provide for transportation options that are accessible and equitable. Let's not allow Helena, the capital city of Montana, to miss out on the opportunity to restore passenger train service. Thank you.
Thank you, Savannah. Our next panelist is Dr. Jeremy Johnson, professor of political science at Carroll College. Dr. Johnson is originally from the Philadelphia area, holds a BA from the University of Pennsylvania and an MA and PhD from Brown University. He's taught at Carroll since 2011 on American politics. Dr. Johnson, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here this evening. I really appreciate it to be able to speak at this very important event. So first, I have a message from the president of Carroll College, John Seck. He says that this project carries his full support, as I believe it would be good for Helena and the students of Carroll College. Let me just expand on some of those points. Many of our students come from across Montana and the Northwest, Oregon, Washington, and many of them would really benefit from being able to travel to Carroll College and Helena by using the train. Many of them may not have cars. As you know, semesters end at at dangerous times to drive. It's not easy to fly. It's not easy to get back and forth. So having the option, having a viable option, having the train as an option for students would help many of them. And I and several other professors have done informal surveys in our classes, and we've had a lot of interest from students in having passenger rail in Helena. It'd be very beneficial for our current students at Carroll College. Not only would it be beneficial for our current students, but we're losing out on students. Again, it's not the easiest thing to always travel to Helena. Often people do not have automobiles, so we lose students who do not who are unable because of transportation reasons to come to Carroll. So I believe it would help our enrollment efforts if we had the passenger rail for additional students to come from throughout Montana and the entire Northwest region. In addition, it would make Carroll College, it would enhance Carroll College's reputation. We become more of a easier destination for both people to attend both academic events and athletic events. We could hold more conferences at Carroll College, and all this would enhance the reputation of the college, both in the state of Montana and across the region and even the country, if we had the opportunity to have easier transportation to and from Carroll College, which of course passenger rail to Helena would give for us. This isn't the capital city. It seems just very important for Helena to be reachable from on train. It would be certainly many of the professors and staff at Carroll College would utilize this service frequently. I've taken trains my entire life across the entire country. I would be one of the people who would definitely travel by rail, both within the state, destinations within the state, and across the region and the country. So the full support I give this is just a wonderful opportunity if we could have it for both the school, for the city, for the community. And I certainly hope that, going forwards, that passenger rail expands here in Montana and we get the passenger rail back. I was not in Montana in 1979. I was alive, but I wasn't here. And I would love to see it, sometime here in my career, to be able to take the train from Helena. Thank you very much for having me tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Our next panelist is Kelly Flaherty Settle, a Canyon County resident who operates the Settle Ranch Company with her husband, Scott. She also previously served on the Lewis and Clark County Planning Commission for 12 years. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you. It's Canyon Creek and we are in Lewis and Clark County. That's okay. Anyway, good evening, everyone. I am humbled to be a part of this. My good friend who has passed away, Bob Stevens, was an avid supporter of rail transportation. And I feel like I'm kind of carrying on his legacy. I can't speak to the economics. My husband and I run a cattle ranch. We ship via semi. I am a tax auditor at the state. But I can tell you that I am a north of 64-year resident of Helena and Lewis and Clark County. And I think I have a pretty good idea of what this county and what this city is about and what it needs and what it lacks. Like I said, I can't speak to the economics. My issues are threefold. As a resident of Lewis and Clark County, I put on over 50 miles a day in travel to go into Helena and back to work. And in the last 32 years, I have seen an increase of cars, an increase in speed, an increase in the number of semis on I-15. And God love us, we love our big cars. And I've seen an increase in the size of trucks and vehicles. And to me, this is a safety issue. My night vision is not as good. My reflexes are not as good. And I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but none of us are getting younger. We're all getting older, and this is going to happen to all of us. And I think that rail transportation, I used to go to Bozeman, I used to go to Missoula at the drop of a hat. I don't go anymore because I do not like having to fight the semis and the vehicles on I-90. I'm sorry, it scares the living daylights out of me. And I think that this rail travel is going to help us as a population, personally. I can get on a train and I can go to Bozeman and I can enjoy my day. I can go to Missoula, I can go to Spokane. Whereas now I'm not I'll think twice about doing that. I think it's important. The Hiawatha is going to link Webo County to Missoula County. And the point has been made that these are two counties that are probably don't have a lot in common, but this is something that they have in common. And, the northern route travels through the least populated area of the state of Montana. This route is going to travel through the most populated area of the state of Montana. And I believe that's very, very important. I think train travel is it's a lot more, it's safer for me. Another aspect I looked at was the social aspect. My notes are to the left, sorry guys. I can remember taking the train to Miles City as a small child. And I lived on the East Coast for a couple of years. And I used to take the train from DC to Boston. And I've done some traveling in Europe, and the social aspect is just wonderful. You get to talk to people from different areas of the country. You get to see different perspectives and maybe open up a little bit, to kind of go, oh, I didn't think of it like that. It's just such a fun way to travel. And I think that linking the two ends of the state, we're looking at Gallatin County and Custer County and Sweetgrass and Webo and Rosebud and Sanders. And these are all counties that have distinct characteristics. And it's important that all of us can talk to each other and learn about each other. And I think on a train, you talk to people, you go in, you visit with the person sitting next to you. It's really important, that social aspect for me. It is. The last aspect is the ease of travel. it's not that I fear flying, but I don't particularly like it. You know, you're kind of encased in that little seat. And then if you have to get up and walk, you've got an aisle that's maybe 2 feet wide. Train travel provides more relaxation. If you have to work, if you have to answer phone calls, you can do that while you're sitting there on your way. I was a member of a committee for 8 years, and I had to go to Bozeman once a quarter. And it would have been so nice to be able to take that train and not have to take, you know, my time and just sit behind a windshield time, and rather than I could have been getting ready for the hearings that I had to, you know, participate in. There's the scenery, and I know that might not be really important, but if any of you have ever ridden via bicycle the Hiawatha Trail, you will see some scenery that is incredible. It's beautiful, and you would not see that if you were not on that trail. I used to, as I said, I used to travel from DC to Boston, and sunrise over New London, Connecticut was always really pretty. So you get the feel of the landscape, and you know, you don't have to be there at 5 a.m. to catch a 7 a.m. flight. So I just think that individually, as people, socially, and I just think it's so important that we get this railroad passenger train system up and going. And as a north of 64 years of age resident of Lewis and Clark County, I am going to challenge my county commissioners to explain to me why this is not an advantage and why they do not sign on to this. Thank you very much. I'm honored and pleased to be able to contribute to Northern Plains again. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Our last panelist is Mike Rooney of Downtown Helena Incorporated. Mike grew up in Pennsylvania and previously spent 4 years at the Montana Wilderness Association as their development manager. He holds a degree from the University of Notre Dame in English and anthropology. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to everyone for joining. Yeah, as someone who's from Pennsylvania, I lived in DC for 5 years after graduating from college, and I think I drove my car home once and I sold it right after that. So for me, that was such an ease to get back from DC to Philly for, you know, $50, $150 sometimes. Just the ease of use was huge. But to speak more to tourism and the economic benefits, I don't have any hard data to present. I wish I did. I'd love for maybe us to work kind of further on this as well. But anecdotally, I think in Helena, of all the bikers from Bozeman and Missoula that come here in May when the spring thaw kicks in, because our trails are the driest, they're usually, you know, the easiest to access in the spring. I'm thinking about how many people descend on Helena in May to access our trails in the South Hills. So, and also those people contribute to our breweries, they contribute to our gear shops, they contribute to other retail. So for us as Helena, that's a huge economic benefit to have that opportunity for people to easily get to Helena. I also think of all the events. I would love to hop on the train with my wife and go see a show at the Wilma in Missoula and come back that night, or possibly, you know, rent a hotel and come back the next day. And I also think of all the sporting events that we have across the state. I can't, my wife's coworker, she drives her son to hockey games all across the state. And I can't think how much time behind the windshield is spent doing that. So I think it'd be a great benefit for us to think also of all the rec sports, whether it's college, high school, or club sports that come through Helena and are across the state as well. And a lot of the issues have been touched on with the ease of travel, I'd say, especially driving in the winter here. But I do want to touch on how our state does have a problem with drunk driving. And I do feel that by having the train system in place, we could potentially have an ad campaign, have a very concerted push to ensure people that, hey, you know what, instead of driving over Mac Pass to Missoula after maxing out at one of our watering holes, maybe you should consider staying here, but, you know, renting a hotel, taking a train back or something like that. So I think that there's a ton of opportunity for us, especially as the capital. I mean, we didn't even mention the fact that every 2 years, all of our representatives also descend on the Capitol. So I think that there's a ton of opportunity for us here. And I'd love to hear reasons as to why we wouldn't go through with this. I know that Mayor Collins did touch on some of the economic, the financial reasons, but I'd like to hear more about why we wouldn't do this in the first place. So kind of keep it short and sweet. And thanks again, Paul.
All right. Thank you, Mike. And thank you to all of our panelists for offering their perspectives and that great information. Just a reminder that if you would like to sign the petition to get Lewis and Clark County on board with passenger rail, it is posted in the chat, and you can just click on that link and access the information that way. We'll now move into the question and answer portion of our forum, and we'll do this by way of our chat. If you have a question, please type, quote, "I have a question" in the chat, and our chat moderator will call on you in the order that the chats appear, and you can unmute yourself and ask your question. You can direct your question directly to Dave or any of the 5 panelists, or ask a general question and give multiple speakers the opportunity to answer. And please stay muted until you are until you're called on. So.
Okay, I'm looking at the chat right now. It looks like Patty Alberg has a question. Patty, if you would unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. I think my question is the same as many other people. Why did Lewis and Clark County commissioners not just jump at the chance to be a part of this? What were their stated reasons? And how do we address that and get them on board? Because this is nuts that they didn't do this, in my opinion.
Me too. Do we have someone who'd like to answer that? Maybe Dave, are you available?
Well, I think, like I said in my opening, that I met with a couple of people on when they heard I was part of this forum, and they said that they still can't wrap their heads around how it's going to get funded, and how is the future funding mapped out? How is it going to be taxed? And I didn't have an answer for that. And so I'm assuming if I didn't have an answer and I'm one of the leaders, a lot of people are wondering how is it going to be funded and taxed, and what's the equity value? I mean, there's some unanswered questions, at least from the 2 people I met before joining.
Hey, Paul, can I take a crack at that?
Yes, go ahead. Dave.
Okay, well, first off, I know better than to put words in the mouths of one of my colleague county commissioners across the state, so I will not pretend to answer for them on that first question. In terms of Mayor Collins' questions that he was posed with by a constituent, and that probably many other folks are thinking about, cost. So first, right out of the chute, we are not talking about trading off the Empire Builder for expanded passenger rail service in the southern tier of Montana. It's a matter of both. Additionality, adding to, not subtracting from. We too often get in this zero-sum game mentality where there's got to be a loser for every winner. That is not what we're talking about. We are talking about strengthening and making our overall national network passenger rail system stronger by adding connectivity. So how is the Empire Builder paid for? And that is exactly what we are talking about by way of this long distance route through southern Montana. How much does a resident of, say, a Hill County pay in their local taxes for the Empire Builder? Zero. We are not talking about the residents of Montana through your property taxes, local taxes, state taxes, paying for this long distance service. the Empire Builder and every other long distance route in this country is paid for through a combination of ticket prices, the fare box, and public investment. Well, some will immediately say, man, unless passenger rail pays for itself, I'm not going to be supportive of it. Well, let's look at other modes of transportation. There is not a mode of transportation on this planet that moves people that pays for itself without public investment. I can hazard a guess that if the airport in Helena is anything like the airport that I'm very familiar with in Missoula, Montana, it is heavily invested in by the federal government. And in fact, if any of us had to pay and kind of internalize the price of what it takes for the airline industry in a airline ticket, none of us could afford to travel by air. The same with our transportation system on the highways and roads that we all are familiar with. Oh, in my county, we don't have a single toll road that I'm aware of, nor is there a single toll road in the state of Montana that I'm aware of. How is the maintenance of our roads, certainly at a local county level, paid for? By public investment. So we just need to get over this, this notion that somehow passenger rail ought to be held to a different standard than any other mode of transportation. In the short term, we do have a path forward here funding wise. And this is something that we've lacked in the past. There was now a significantly outdated feasibility study done over a decade ago related to this route we're talking about. And not only since then have many of the infrastructure investments actually been completed that were suggested at the time, but also following that study, there was never the commitment by the federal government, by this nation, to invest in passenger rail as there is now. And to Kelly and your point, I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to be here 10 years from now lamenting the fact that we've not gotten this over the finish line, because we'll all be 10 years older and 10 years closer to the grave. So I certainly want to be riding on this train while I'm living, not a funeral train. So Mayor Collins, to your point, it would be paid for. The capital investment is available in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. There are $12 billion in that act, and if a portion of them are not coming to the state of Montana, it's going somewhere. So let's get off our ideological high horse and think that if we turn this away, it's going to be saved. No, it's going to be invested somewhere else in the country. $12 billion are earmarked for intercity passenger rail. Of that, a minimum of 20% must go towards long distance passenger rail. $2.4 billion must go towards the very type of project that we are talking about. Will it be easy to get this completely over the finish line? No, but folks, the 100 or so folks on the line tonight are part of the voices that will need to be loud and clear to our members of Congress that this is something that we want. So the dollars are there to get this going, and the time is now.
Thank you, David. I got another message on the chat here from Commissioner Andy Hunthausen, and he's offered to, he's by the way, a county commissioner for Lewis and Clark County. And I think he would like to give us a little perspective from the county commission point of view. Andy?
Paul, thank you. I hate to butt in here, but well, first of all, I'll say, I guess it's the thing. Thank you to Dave and Paul, Bozeman Paul, thank you, and our local Paul for all the work you guys are doing, putting this together and gathering people. So appreciate that. Just a little bit from my perspective. First of all, I don't have to repeat everything. Commissioner Strohmaier just went over a number of reasons why this is a good idea and answered a lot of the complicated questions. And I agree with all of those. So I am a supporter of passenger rail and supporter of Lewis and Clark County joining the rail authority. So I'm speaking to the choir here a little bit, and I don't want to speak for my other commissioners. I don't want to speak for them, but I can talk about general themes, I guess, reasons why they may be reluctant. And I think Dave just answered some of those questions already. And one is this going to fall on local taxpayers at some point in the future? I don't think that's the intent at all. I think it's intended to be funded, as Dave just said, just like the Amtrak, the northern route is funded ultimately. If we're part of this authority and someday want to leave the authority, is there a way out of the authority? And I think that's been answered for me. I don't have any issue there. I don't have any issue about the local taxpayer being overly burdened by this, but my fellow commissioners, I believe, do have some concerns in those areas. So, and I don't want to speak for them, but that's what they think. And then just in general, adding more to the federal debt. But as Dave said, this money is going to be going somewhere, at least this first phase. There would be need for sustainable money to keep this line running for the long term. But I think that the cost benefit analysis would probably indicate that we locally would probably benefit overall. The economic benefits of the rail coming through our communities would add jobs and investment in these areas that have already been shown. I don't want to go over that again. And us being the state capital, and I think Mike mentioned that every 2 years our state government meets, and we should be offering opportunities for people to engage more fully in their state government, not to limit those. So this gives one more opportunity to do that, I believe. And of course, the convenience of the travel that many of you have mentioned. So I'm all for it. One thing I would mention, I really respect my fellow commissioners. They're good people, and I think they're trying to do the best they can. But Commissioner McCormick has also announced his retirement at the end of this year, and there will be a new commissioner next year. So I think your ongoing efforts to try and make sure that the people that are looking at these positions and the people that are in these positions make sure that your voices are heard. And I think that's important. So anyway, I'll stop there. I'd be happy to answer questions, but I don't want to be in the middle of this whole thing unless someone asks me something. So thank you very much, and on we go. All aboard, I guess, is the word, right, Dave?
Thank you, Commissioner Hunthausen. We have a question from, let's see, Susan Debris. If you would unmute and ask your question.
Thanks for the chance. One of my concerns about the whole development of the more passenger service is just the whole thing about trying to use more renewable energies and saving on the fossil fuels situation and all that kind of stuff. And back in the day, the Milwaukee Railroad ran on electric power over the Continental Divide. I think was generated from the river stations. So it was a hydro type electrical magnetic. I don't know how all that stuff works, engineers do, but I just would be wondering if that's possible, and that may be way down the line, but in the consideration of developing this, whether there's a possibility of utilizing more of the renewable energy resources.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Do we have an answer for that?
Yeah, if I could jump in, Paul. Yeah, great question. Even as it is right now with the Amtrak diesel electric trains, by some estimates, they are 55% more efficient than our passenger vehicles or light trucks. 33% more efficient than domestic air travel. So even just taking the current technology that's in use by way of what you might see along the High Line and the Empire Builder or other Amtrak routes, it's way more efficient, energy efficient than other modes of transportation. That being said, you're absolutely right that we need to be looking to the next phase of passenger rail and train travel, and that would be electrification of the system. That's Again, not what we're looking at right out of the chute, but it's absolutely been something that those of us on the Rail Authority have discussed.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's see, Olivia Coburn. You would unmute.
Yeah, so my question was if the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority had the power to levy taxes to fund itself, and if so, how does that work?
Yeah, thanks for that. So the Rail Authority is a subdivision of state government. We are also a taxing jurisdiction. But when it comes to exercising that authority, first off, as I mentioned earlier, the way that this train system would be funded by way of capital investment and ongoing operation costs would not be falling to local governments or the state of Montana. This would be a federal responsibility, partnering with Amtrak. What are the costs of the Rail Authority? Well, basically administrative costs to do the work that we intend to do. And that means to coordinate and collaborate with our federal state partners, the host railroads, to be that conduit for coordination and collaboration that we have not had in the past. We have no intent in the near term to go down the path of exercising any levy authority, but here's the thing to take heart in. 17 counties in this Rail Authority, as you saw on the map. Most of these are small, sparsely populated, fiercely conservative counties. Each of these counties has one director on the Rail Authority board. I can guarantee you that there will never be put to the voters of the Rail Authority member counties the question of a tax levy unless there is overwhelming good reason to do so. And right at this point in time, we are looking at voluntary contributions from member counties, grant funding, voluntary contributions from others to help with the administrative costs of the authority. And take heart, there's another piece of this, and that is that it's not as though a bunch of counties can gang up on unwilling counties and force their viewpoint on them, such that if you in Lewis and Clark County voted against a tax levy, that somehow you would be forced to pay. No, it's on a county by county basis, such that every member county, if we put the question to all of the member counties, all 17, do you want to tax yourself some amount to help with the Rail Authority? If the vote goes down in Lewis and Clark or Webo County, the residents of that county, the property tax payers in that county would not pay a dime. That does obviously create some inequities, and that there are free riders out there that will certainly reap the benefits of not paying in. But we're okay with that. We are not relying upon this as a tool in the near future to fund the authority. But good question, and it is. Look at it this way: we are not unlike an airport authority, other taxing jurisdictions. In our case, it's structured a little bit differently in that it's a county by county basis in terms of how the vote would go.
Thank you, Commissioner Strohmaier. I think that Patty Alberg has asked a question, but I think she has another question. Is that right? Patty Alberg, are you still there?
Yes, that's correct. And it's the question Allison just put on the chat. With the BNSF now taking over Montana Rail, are there any anticipated hurdles from that? Is there anything, because now BNSF will generally control all the rail in the state, if I'm not mistaken. Is there anything coming from that merger or takeover that is of concern, or is it good?
I don't want to dominate this, but I'll go ahead and take a crack at this. And certainly if other folks have thoughts too, that would be fine. From the rail authority's perspective, we were ready and willing to work with both Montana Rail Link and Burlington Northern Santa Fe, and potentially Union Pacific if we're talking connectivity between Butte and Salt Lake City. So from that standpoint, we see this as, the court might still be out a little bit, but we are cautiously optimistic. The no-brainer is we're only going to have to deal with one railroad company, one private railroad, as opposed to two. So there's some advantage to us from that standpoint. Another potential advantage is BNSF has a long track record of working with passenger rail operations across the nation, not so much with Montana Rail Link. So I think there's opportunity there. I've had conversations with executives from both Washington companies, the parent company for Montana Rail Link, and Burlington Northern Santa Fe. Next week, I'll be meeting with the vice president for passenger rail operations for BNSF. So we're in close communication, and I look forward to seeing how we can chart a positive course forward.
Thank you again, David. I have a message here. It's not written as a question, but I'm wondering if maybe this person would like to bring it up for discussion. Bruce Mihailish, would you like to discuss your comment and perhaps put it in question form? Bruce Mihailish?
Yeah, I'm here. Probably directing towards David again. Sorry to pick on you, Dave. What are your thoughts if Helena declines this or somehow forgoes this opportunity? Where's Butte America stand in this whole situation?
Well, again, I am hard pressed to say it's always an either or proposition. And for some folks, it might be okay if the line doesn't go through, if the route does not go through Helena, it will go through Butte, and Helena will be completely cut out. Is it not possible to have both? And a little premature for that, but if anyone if you haven't noticed, the only operational rail line is through Helena. So there's an advantage of having a seat at the table, absolutely, during this planning phase. Butte certainly would love to have Homestake Pass reopened, which has not been operational for decades. Perhaps Burlington Northern Santa Fe would like to see Homestake Pass open to enhance and to add capacity to their freight operations. Too early to tell on that front. Yeah, I think at this point, and the same would go for Mineral County and Lake County. There's an alignment west of Missoula that goes over Evero Hill and up through the southern tip of Lake County, or you could, there's an operational rail line through Mineral County down the Clark Fork River up to Paradise. Yet to be determined what the final configuration will be there. At this point, we want to keep all options on the table. And I mean, hypothetically, if the rail line did go through Butte, or if the rail line went through Lake County and not Mineral, it's still important to have a seat at the table to shape what are the transit options, the connectivity options to the rail line look like, because it's going to be a whole lot closer driving from Helena to Butte or from Butte to Helena to catch a train than it is to drive up to Shelby. So there's an important reason to have a seat at the table at this juncture in order to help shape what that service looks like.
I just want to add, it would just be, in my opinion, if this got built and it didn't go through Helena, that'd just be an absolute tragedy. It's just so important as a state capital for the benefits in this community. I talked about the benefits of this college. If it got built and it didn't go through Helena, that would just, in my opinion, just be, it would just set us back as a city and community. It would just be terrible.
Thank you, Jeremy and Commissioner Strohmaier. We have a question from Paige Myers. If you'd unmute.
Hello, my name is Paige. I'm 21, and because of that, I have very little experience with passenger trains. So I have a few logistical questions. and I hope I'm not cheating by combining a couple. Are there any modifications that need to be done to our current railroad and train station? And from our conversation, it's my understanding that changes to the railroad would be covered by the federal government and public donation. And my second question, I guess, is if needed, where would the money come for changing or even building another train station?
Crack at that too. So great question. So in terms of, let's take the, yeah, I'll take it in order. First question. So in terms of what infrastructure investments would be required, and let's be clear about this. Some folks have articulated a hesitancy to participate in the rail authority or our efforts because they're concerned that we're going to impede or disrupt freight rail operations. Well, even the freight rail companies, BNSF and Montana Rail Link, have formally been neutral on passenger rail insofar as we don't damage their freight operations. And my comeback there is that's setting the bar awfully low. We can do better than that. We can do better than just doing you no harm. We can look for ways to invest in the infrastructure to create mutual benefit. How do you do that? Well, in order to have freight and passenger trains run unimpeded, we're going to have to add some additional double tracking as opposed to a single track. We're going to have to add some additional sidings. Those are some of the big ticket items. In terms of the rail stations themselves, that's, I mean, if we can get the rest of the capital investment done, the rail station piece is a minor portion of all of this. For instance, I just about a half an hour before this meeting tonight was on a call with the city of Miles City. Custer County is a member of the rail authority. And Miles City is in Custer County, for those of you who are rusty on your geography here in Montana. And they have an old train station, probably not unlike Helena. Well, maybe Helena is not a great example, but maybe not unlike Bozeman's, that graffiti artist paradise that you saw earlier. And currently it's home to many pigeons right now, and it's being unused. It's owned by BNSF in Miles City. Miles City, or I should say Burlington Northern Santa Fe, is looking at perhaps gifting it to a public entity. So there's an opportunity to acquire a facility, to look at adaptively reusing it, to investing it into some probably a combination of commercial use, also train station use, maybe even some residential use to make this pencil out. There might very well need to be some local match to go into that. Perhaps the rail authority itself would be a partner in this undertaking. So there will undoubtedly be an opportunity for local citizens to craft their own destiny and determine what your station facilities look like and how much you want to invest in it. And I think it's okay to have some level of skin in the game, but believe me, the majority of the skin we're talking about in this game, as far as the major infrastructure investments, are not going to come from local government, state government. That's going to be a federal Amtrak partnership.
Thank you, Commissioner Strohmaier. I don't see any new questions here. Am I missing one? If you wanted to ask a question and I haven't called on you.
David, if I could just build off of what you were just talking about too. And Mayor Collins did touch on this, just thinking about how much the 6th Ward in Midtown right now is expanding and growing. And there's some amazing businesses in that region of Helena right now. And bringing that train back through that region, that area is just kind of a non sequitur. I think it's a great idea as well.
And there are great examples around this country. Individual named John Robert Smith, who's a passenger rail expert, former mayor of Meridian, Mississippi, can regale you with stories of how the redevelopment of their train station, their infrastructure, was a catalyst for investment and just adding vitality to a main street in the community that he knows and loves. And we can replicate that example across the country, whether it's through light rail projects or through what we're talking about here, where you create opportunities for mixed use development. It's really a development that focuses around transit, and transit can take many forms.
Paul, we had in our comments about, there's also a major VA hospital locally. We are also the headquarters of a number of insurance companies here. I mean, there's just so many, the business community, there's just so many good reasons for this to go through Helena. I just hope to see it someday really happen.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Johnson. Again, I don't see any new questions. Am I missing anyone? If I am, unmute and identify yourself.
Yes, I would ask a question.
Okay, who is this?
This is, I'm Bob Karazik. You got me there as W.R. Karazik. I have ridden the train to Glendive when it was operating. I did 40 years of engineering, and I'm totally in favor of it. I am a grizzly and a bobcat, gone to both schools. Johnson, I delivered papers at Carroll. Anyway, the father hunt house. Anyway, that railroad line was built through land grant. It was given by the government to the railroad, and they dropped the ball. I think they ought to bring the ball back and own up. They got every other section along and then some along the trackage. And nobody said anything about this. I did have 8 people working 50 hours a week for the last 9 years of my career. Before that, I was a construction engineer, built missile sites. And I moved back to Helena, where my son is a 5th generation. We have been here a while. But go back to land grants and let's have the railroad. They dropped the ball on us. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes. Thank you, Bob. Good comment. I have a question here from Mark Initial J. Is Mark Initial J still here?
Yeah, I am, Paul. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just curious from both the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority's perspective and from the county commissioners, what the process is for joining the authority, what the timeline is, when's the next opportunity to join.
Happy to answer that. The opportunity is now. So it's pretty, we've made the process pretty easy. So it was late last year, the rail authority, let me back up. The way the process is set out in state law is that a county needs to petition the rail authority. Once the rail authority is established in the first place, additional members need to petition the authority for membership. By petitioning, I mean adopting a resolution, and then the rail authority needs to do public notice across all, in this case, 17 member counties. And then we are able to formally bring that new county into the authority. And this was getting to be so costly just with the public notice in every newspaper across the entire state every time we did this kind of piecemeal, that last fall the rail authority provisionally accepted all of those counties that were shaded in the map, provisionally accepted all of those counties that are not currently members into the rail authority, contingent on them passing a resolution requesting membership. So that's kind of a convoluted way to say all that a new county would need to do is go through basically a 2-week period of noticing in your local newspaper twice that they intend to adopt a resolution petitioning for membership in the rail authority, adopt the resolution, and we will gladly accept them into the authority. So within a month period of time, a newly petitioning member or county could be in the rail authority.
Thank you, Dave. I have a question from Janet Seymour. You want to unmute and ask a question?
Okay, thanks, Paul. First of all, I want to say that I'm 100 and whatever percent in favor of the joining the Passenger Rail Authority. But what if Lewis and Clark County does join the Passenger Rail Authority and then finds out that it's not to our benefit? Can we withdraw our membership? That's sort of a negative question, but.
I love that. Trying to get out before you get in.
No,
But,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's.
I
it's
just
always-
thought some people might have that question.
No, it's always prudent to do your due diligence. Yes, you can exit the authority the same way you enter it, with the one caveat: if a county has incurred any financial liability as part of being in the rail authority, then as with any joint arrangement between jurisdictions, you can't just walk away from your financial commitments. If, for instance, the authority and every member county is party to paying off a bond, for instance, you could exit the authority when you have completed your financial obligation of that, but you just can't walk away. And I mean, that's just common sense with anything in life. But the shorter answer is yes. If you find it for whatever reason undesirable to remain in the authority, you can exit. Although I can't imagine a reason why that would come to pass.
Neither can I. Thank you very much.
Well, that sure relieves me, Dave. Thank you. Looks like we have a question from Max Milton. If Max is still here, unmute, please.
Yeah, I'm here. So what actually has to happen for a decision to be made to go forward with the line, for the service to be reestablished? What steps would have to happen for that to actually become a reality?
Happy to take a crack at that too. So as I mentioned, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, otherwise known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that was passed last fall, includes a provision that directs the Secretary of Transportation to, within a 2-year period of time, and the clock started ticking last fall on this, to provide a report to Congress that evaluates the feasibility of restoring and actually is a service development plan of restoring long distance passenger rail routes in this country that have been disconnected. And that does not mean all of them. There's going to be only a subset that are included in this. And we actually, as the Rail Authority, helped draft the language that establishes the criteria that would identify which routes should be looked at. So the legislative intent is that the North Coast Hiawatha be a part of this study. The study is completed at that point in time, and I should say during this point, during the period of the study itself, the Secretary of Transportation is authorized to establish working groups to assist with this. And so I am going to be back in Washington, D.C. in 2 weeks, sitting down with the Federal Railroad Administration's administrator. And what I'll be suggesting is that he convene what we're calling the Greater Northwest Working Group, Passenger Rail Working Group, to help with this study. And the states involved here would be from basically Wisconsin to Oregon and Washington. The state of Montana, the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority, would have a seat at the table here. So we get the study done. And as I mentioned earlier, there are actual dollars, real dollars in the infrastructure bill that provide for the infrastructure upgrades that would be necessary. So that's really the next phase. That's a couple of years down the line here, but we will continue to do everything that we can in our power to set ourselves up for success. And that means all of us collectively here, we don't walk away and sit on our laurels. It's a matter of all of us collectively continuing to communicate to our federal congressional delegation that this is important for Montana, the rail authority will do what we can to work across state lines to make that case also.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Paige Myers seems to have another question. Are you still here, Paige?
Yes, thank you. So let's say the plan is approved and we get on this railway, which I have a romantic view of passenger trains, so I would like to experience that. And as far as we know, would we need to modify the railroads in City of Helena? And how long would it take to do those changes?
Good question. I don't know enough of your Helena railroad infrastructure situation to answer that, but the study that I'm talking about is precisely the mechanism by which we would drill down into what the infrastructure needs are, not only in Helena, but along the entire route that we're talking about. So it would both identify what the needs are, quantify those in terms of costs, and chart a path forward for implementation. Was there another part of your question that I missed there?
No, I didn't have a combo question this time.
Okay, thank you both of you. Susie Holt has made a comment that I think could use verbalizing. Susie, would you like to verbalize the comment you had in chat? Susie Holt?
Okay, I can do that. I think signing this petition to express our support and sending it to the county commissioners is a great idea, great thing to do. But I think the most effective thing I've learned over the years is to actually write a letter. I think handwritten is even best, certainly not a postcard that's been pre-scripted, but write a letter to the commissioners talking about why you support the train and what benefit, what value it has for you specifically, not using generalities, but being specific with them. And what else did I say? So letters are good directly to the commissioners, but I've also been told that it's even more effective still to write to the newspaper, write a letter to the newspaper, because that reaches the commissioners' constituencies, so the commissioners can't ignore it because their voters have read it, have seen it, have thought about it. So, but while I'm on, I do have a question. Did have a question. When the railroad did go through Helena and it went out of use, in the 70s, late 70s, there was a lot of federal money coming in around that time too. So why was the service discontinued, and has the environment or the factors affecting that changed enough to really make it feasible? Dave, maybe you can speak to that, or.
Yeah, just really quickly, since we're running short on time here. During the Carter administration, 1979, this was a period of retrenchment in the federal government, and it was a bit of a political decision at that point in time that if Montana was to only have one passenger rail line, where ought it to be? Even at that point in time, the more, yeah.
I thought it was earlier in the 70s.
No, it was 1979. How time flies.
Okay. Yeah, everything changed.
Okay. Thank you.
I know. I have another question.
Okay, shoot.
Has a formal presentation been made to our county commissioners?
Yes.
By anyone? A formal presentation?
Yes, I've visited with them in Helena.
Okay.
And Susie, I could add to that, there's been 5 different times that they've officially discussed this in commission meetings. I have a question from Samuel Albert Brown.
Hi, thanks. I think this would be one for David again. I'm wondering if you guys have experienced any opposition to the project, and if so, how is it going to be addressed? Thanks.
Thanks for that. Yeah, some of the hesitancy or concern or concerns that we've heard, we've already hit on. One of them is, will it pay for itself? Well, it's going to pay for itself like every other mode of transportation that moves people pays for itself. It does not without public investment. Will it mean the demise of the empire builder? We can't do anything expansion wise if it's going to bring the empire builder to a halt. No, that is not the case. We're talking about adding to, not subtracting from. Will it impede the freight railroads? Not what we're talking about. We're not talking about cramming additional train sets onto the existing system without infrastructure investments. From just the rail authority standpoint, I think one of the reasons why some counties, and Lewis and Clark is not necessarily in this category, but why some counties might be hesitant is we're doing something that has never been done before in the state of Montana, and that is work across jurisdictional lines to create the largest transportation district in the state. Oftentimes what counties do is focus inwardly, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done within our jurisdictional boundaries. But in some instances, like passenger rail, the only way we can realize the benefits that come from it at a local level is to work at a larger geographic state and national level.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Let's take one more question, and then I think we're going to have to close this up. We're probably 30 minutes over time right now. And I had a question just come in from Kyle Rosling. This will be the last question.
Yes, I was just curious what the benefit would be if our county were to join the authority before the study was completed at the federal level.
Well, how to sum that up? I guess I think there's great benefit to having a seat at the table during the planning process to help shape your own destiny. From kind of an authority-centric standpoint, we will take anyone at any point in time that they want to join, but the folks who are the 17 counties who are members of the authority right now, and our whole slate of dedicated volunteers, and I should also put in a plug that you don't have to be a member of the county, a resident of a county who's a member to participate in the rail authority. We've got opportunities for citizen volunteers to help out. But all of that said, there's a lot of work being done right now, and you will reap the rewards of the work that the hardworking members of the authority are doing as we speak. So much the better. If many hands make light work, come on board and have a seat at the table, a decision-making seat. And that's the difference. If you're a member county of the authority, you have a seat at the table on our board of directors, and that is not insignificant.
Thank you, Commissioner Strohmaier, and thank you, all you panel members. I'll turn this back over to Paul, our moderator.
All right, very good. Well, I want to also extend my appreciation and thanks to everyone for asking your questions, our panelists, and Dave as a guest speaker. Of course, we're coming to the end of the forum. We'd like to thank the members of the Sleeping Giants Citizens Council for their hard work in putting this forum together. So maybe we can have a virtual round of applause for our friends with the Sleeping Giant Citizens Council. Please reach out if you're interested in getting involved with Sleeping Giant. This is the last reminder to please sign the petition supporting passenger rail and urging the Lewis and Clark County Commissioners to do the same. That petition link should be posted in the chat. It's been posted multiple times. You should be able to see it again there. I want to thank everyone for attending. The petition will be live for 2 weeks following this forum, so you'll have the opportunity to spread the word and ask friends and family and community members who didn't get a chance to attend this forum to sign on. So to close, we'll be playing a music video recorded by J.K. Simmons and David Simmons supporting passenger rail. So with that, I want to thank everyone again. Have a great night. And as we've heard before, all aboard, Montana. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Hi there, this is David Simmons.
And J.K. Simmons.
And we are excited to ride that line again.
We are indeed looking forward to the restoration of the North Coast Hiawatha line through southern Montana.
Board.
Been more than 40 years since we heard that whistle blow. More than 40 years since we seen them engines roll. Steel wheels and mighty pistons brought us down that line. Don't you think right now it's about time? All aboard Montana, let's ride that line again. Watch our treasure beauty roll by like an old friend. All aboard Montana, like we all did way back when. All aboard Montana, time to ride that line again. Let's all work together, make our dream come true. One with another, just takes me and you. Them steel wheels and mighty pistons are waiting on that line. Don't you think right now it's about time? All aboard Montana, let's ride that line again. Watch our treasure beauty roll by like an old friend. All aboard Montana, like we all did way back when. All aboard Montana, time to ride that line again. All aboard Montana, let's ride that line again. And watch our treasure beauty